Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Holodomor Hot of the Press webinar tonight, which highlights recently published historical fiction about the Holodomor. I have been invited to host tonight's webinar. It is a very special webinar which we offer for Holodomor Remembrance Day in schools, which is today on April 16th, during April Genocide Remembrance, Condemnation, and Prevention Month. My name is Mateusz Świetlicki. I'm an associate professor at the University of Wrocław's Institute of English Studies and director of the Center for Young People's Literature and Culture. My most recent books are Next Generation Memory and Ukrainian Canadian Children's Historical Fiction, The Seeds of Memory, published by Routledge in 2023, and Fieldwork in Ukrainian Children's Literature, co-edited with Anastasia Olanovich, also published by Routledge Press in 2025. I join you tonight from Wrocław, Poland. I would like to say a word about HREC education under the direction of Valentina Koreliv and Assistant Director Sofia Isayu, who organized this webinar series. HREC education is the education side of the Holodomor Research and Education Consortium, or HREC, which promotes the research, study, teaching, and understanding of the Holodomor, the famine genocide in Ukraine of 1932-33. HREC was established with the support of the Temerty Foundation as a project of the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies at the University of Alberta, with its main office in Toronto. HREC education promotes the inclusion and teaching of the Holodomor in curricula and educational institutions through teaching training programs. It develops resources, instructional materials, and lesson plans, holds conferences and workshops, presents webinars such as this, as well as other talks and presentations. It also consults on curriculum with ministries of education, school boards, administrators, curriculum leaders, educators, and museums. HREC Education in Toronto welcomes you from the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit, which is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island with whom they're grateful to share this land. It is my pleasure now to introduce to you the author of Black Sunflowers. Our very special guest today is Cynthia Lebrun, who is a retired school teacher with 30 years of teaching in the Campbell River area. Cynthia grew up in Kelowna, British Columbia, and studied to be a teacher at Simon Fraser University. She taught in a northern one-room schoolhouse west of Fort St. John, as well as the isolated logging camp of Phillips Farm, and finally in Campbell River. Cynthia now lives and writes in beautiful Prince George, British Columbia, where she enjoys time watching the moose and deer in her backyard and baying with her grandsons. Cynthia is a recipient of the 2022 International Peterson Literary Emerging Writers Grant for Black Sunflowers. This is her first novel, drawn from first-hand personal testimonies inspired by the vivid memories of her mother-in-law, who grew up in Soviet-occupied Ukraine, with extensive historical research, which she began writing 20 years ago. And with that, I would like to welcome author Cynthia Lebrun. And Cynthia, I'd like to begin by asking you to read the pages you chose from your novel, if you would please.
I would love to. Thank you, Matthias. So in my novel, I really wanted to have quotes that supported the chapter because I felt the information my mother-in-law told me and then following up with the research was so outrageous. I never heard of such atrocities. Maybe there'd be other people that wouldn't believe what I'm writing. They think maybe I'm exaggerating or making it up. So I got really pertinent quotes from historians. And so this is my quote before the chapter begins. And it's by Fedor Belov, the former chairman of the Soviet Farm Collective and author of The History of the Soviet Collective Farm. So if anybody knows what happened in that country, this eyewitness would have, Fedor. The peasants ate dogs, horses, rotten potatoes, the bark of trees, grass, anything they could find. And no matter what they did, they went on dying, dying, dying. They died singly and in families. They died everywhere, in the yards and streetcars, on the trains. There was no one to bury these victims of the Stalinist famine. Now, this is chapter 29, and it's a Veronica chapter. The chapters alternate between Veronica the child and her father. February 1932. On the way home from school, Veronica saw a woman on her hands and knees, sifting through rotted leaves. I wonder what she's searching for, Veronica said. Merrick said, acorns. Well, they're poisonous. Let's tell her. Alina tugged on her arm. Don't go near that woman. Maybe she's not in her right mind. But she might die. Oh, go if you want to, Merrick said. I'm taking Alina and Kaja home. Veronica watched her friends leave, then moved toward the woman. Veronica wondered if it was a mistake to go near her, but the woman had already seen her approach and looked on with an expectant half smile. She wore a long winter coat and work boots up to her knees. She was so thin, Veronica could see the outline of her jawbone. The gentle look in the woman's eyes reassured Veronica that it was safe to come closer. Hello, Auntie. You collect acorns? Yes. My mama says they have poison in them. The woman smiled. Thank you, child. I soak them first, then boil them. Then it's all right. What is your name? Veronica. That's a beautiful name. I'm Emelina. Are you alone? I'm with my husband. He's trying to see what he can find for us to eat. I live down the road on that farm, Veronica said. Farm is good. We used to have a farm until we offered it to the collective. Puzzled, Veronica asked, You offered it? Why? Emilia gave a tired smile. We thought we'd have a better life if we lived in barracks on the collective. My husband would no longer have to work by himself. I no longer would have to cook or clean or even do laundry. We'd all live as one, having all our meals and needs taken care of. But we were wrong. Why wrong? The collective has very little to make meals with. Everyone goes hungry now. Veronica's heart went out to her, and she thought of the leftover potato pancakes and dried apple rings in her lunch pail. She took off the lid and asked, Would you like these? Emilia put her hands to her face. Yes, please, anything. In seconds, the pancakes were gone. Thank you, Veronica, Emilia said, putting her hand on Veronica's shoulder. The dried apple I will save for my husband. Veronica felt good inside that she had helped her and wished she could have done more. Mama, Veronica said when she got home, I met a woman that lives on the collective. She was on her knees looking for acorns to eat. I shared my lunch with her. Mama frowned. Don't say anything at school about her. They'll think it's a criticism of Stalin. But people who live on the collective have it very bad right now, just not enough food. Will it happen to us? Oh, no, dear. Just think of how many barrels of food we have in our root cellar and all the dried fruit in our loft. The collective doesn't have root cellars or dried fruit. That's the difference. Do you think Stalin knows people are starving? Come here. Sit down beside me. Veronica walked over to the bench. Her mother's face looked tired, her eyes troubled. Veronica's stomach tightened. Perhaps Mama was upset with her. Mama put her arm around Veronica's back and drew her close. You really need to understand how dangerous it is for us to talk about Stalin or people going hungry. Let's say you tell a friend like Kaja what you saw. And that friend tells someone else, and then they tell their parents. Maybe those parents will report you for talking against Stalin, and all of us could be arrested. Veronica's chest tightened. But maybe Stalin doesn't know people are starving. He does know, Veronica, and he doesn't care. Now read another little bit of a chapter. This chapter is about Yannick's point of view. And the quote for this is by a very famous historian, Timothy Snyder, in his book Bloodlands, Europe Between Hitler and Stalin. Soviet authorities introduced the blacklist. According to this new regulation, collective farms that failed to meet grain targets were required immediately to surrender 15 times the amount of grain that was normally due in the month. This meant that, again, hordes of party activists and police with a mission and the legal right to take everything. No village could meet multiplied quotas, and so the whole community lost all the food they had. Communities on the blacklist also had no right to trade and no right to receive deliveries of any kind from the rest of the country. Blacklist communities became zones of death. Chapter 40, Yannick. I got to tell you a little bit about this chapter before I start. Yannick lives in Western Ukraine, so the Holodomor famine wasn't as bad there, but still it was bad enough. All the family had to live on was potatoes that were starting to rot and dried fruit. So Yannick's decided that he's going to go to another area and sell homemade knives and maybe make some money, and then on the black market buy wheat. And he's traveling by train. He's hopping on train without paying for it, just hopping on when the train slows down with his brother Orest. Now, Orest said, throwing his pack from the moving train. Yannick dropped from the train and tumbled beside the tracks. He brushed himself off while Orest picked up his pack. Yannick looked at the meadow and the woods that surrounded them. In the distance, he could barely see the thatched roofs of a village. He wished they could have ridden the train right into the village, but Orest thought it was too risky. Neither one of them talked much as they walked along the tracks, chewing dried plums. How large is the village? Yannick asked. Orest would know because he used to travel around before the famine. There used to be 200 or 300 people, but no one knows how many there are now. Some likely fled, others got deported, but even so, it shouldn't be a problem to get a bowl of soup and a place to sleep in exchange for sharpening the family's knives. Yannick tromped along beside Orest, his thoughts on his wife Helena and Veronica. What if shock workers had come and taken what little food they had? Maybe even roughed up Helena. A squeezing pressure filled his chest. Stop thinking these thoughts. Helena had a receipt that proved the grain came from legal sources, the Torkson. But what if they didn't look at the receipt? Or worse yet, deported them? He was startled out of his brooding by the raucous cawing of a raven that looked down from them as they walked by, warning other birds of the danger of their passing. The bird's cawing suddenly struck Yannick as odd. Maybe it is I who should warn you, he called to it. Have you not noticed that you sit alone? Fly away out of this country where even birds are not allowed to live in peace. As if in answer, the bird arose and took flight in a great flapping of wings. As they got closer to the village, the air took on a rank, pungent smell. Something dead. Maybe a horse, said Yannick. Likely what's attracted the raven here, Orest said, covering his nose. At the entrance to the village, Orest pointed to a sign nailed on a road marker. A black flag fluttered from the sign. I don't like the looks of that. Let's go see what the sign says. Getting closer, Orest gasped. Oh, me paws. What does it say? Yannick said, frustrated that he couldn't read. It says there's been an epidemic. No one allowed in. Yannick's breath quickened. Maybe even here the air carries disease. Orest nodded, his eyes wide. Yannick and Orest walked rapidly away from whatever disease lurked within the village. I wonder what it was, Yannick asked. Oh, could be anything. Typhus, cholera, smallpox, baby. Yannick felt a chill go up his spine. Good that the government marked it like that. From the corner of Yannick's eye, he saw a group of children crawling in a patch of clover on the opposite side of the track. They grazed like sheep in the field, moving in a slow, deliberate manner, plucking and eating the flower heads. A boy spotted their presence and froze. In a flurry of movement, the children fled into the bushes. Come back. We won't hurt you, Orest called out. After a moment, a young boy with solemn eyes and a gaunt face stepped out from behind a tree. Barefoot, he only wore a pair of ragged pants. Yannick felt his heart go out to this desperately thin child, whose clavicle and rib cage protruded from his small body. Bread? He asked, stretching out his hand. What's your name, boy? Yannick asked. Stepan. You have family? He shook his head. Was it disease that killed your family? The boy's face twisted in anger. There was no disease. My father said they blacklisted us for not having enough grain. Blacklisted? Yannick asked. Everything that we could eat taken away. No one allowed in or out until the entire village is dead. Yannick felt numb. Could the Soviets be so cruel that even children and babies were sentenced to death? How is it that you and the other children are alive? Orest asked. We escaped. The child stretched out his hand again. Bread, please. Yannick opened his pack, broke off a chunk, and held it out. The boy walked closer until he could reach out a bony arm for the bread. Yannick put it into the grim-encrusted hand. The child thrust it in his mouth and chewed rapidly, as if afraid someone would take it from him. Yannick knelt and looked into the boy's face. We have to go on, he said, putting his hand on Stepan's shoulder. I haven't much bread, but I can give you another piece. Yannick broke off another chunk and gave it to him. For a moment, Stepan hesitated, like he was about to say something, then looked down. What is it? Yannick asked. My father, he said, tears trickling down his cheeks. He was kind too. Then he turned and was gone. You gave him so much bread, Orest said. You've got to learn you can't help everyone. Yannick nodded. You're right. I can't help everyone. I can only help those that God puts in my path.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about the book. Let's talk about the novel. Veronica, the protagonist of this critically acclaimed novel, is based on your late mother-in-law.
Yes.
You told us that in the photo that appears on the novel's absolutely beautiful cover, the young girl wears some of Veronica's real possessions.
Yes.
Can you tell us something more about Veronica Tomaszewski and her family? Why did she decide to write about her life and become the keeper of her story? Was it something that she wanted, or was it something that you wanted?
It started out that I just fell in love with Veronica. She was such a lovely woman, and I felt like she was my mom, and I would love to sit close to her and just let her tell me her history, because I love people's history. Everyone has such an interesting history. The more she talked, the more amazed I was. I mean, how could this sweet little granny have such an incredible life? How could it be that she lived under the Soviets, and what she was explaining to me, the horrors? I thought this story of her life is so remarkable. I'm going to make a booklet for the family, and that way preserve the history. So I did that, and the family just loved it. Then people started saying to me, "Well, what happened next? And what happened? What else happened?" I go, "Well, I didn't ask her anymore." "Well, ask her." I want to know what happened here and what happened there. So I began to tape record and spent days and weeks through the year with her recording. I began to talk about what I was doing with family and friends, and they had not heard what Stalin did. Like they thought maybe he was kind of a good guy because he was an ally in the war. I mean, yeah, maybe he did some bad things, but not that bad. When I realized how many people died under his hand, and not just from the Holodomor, like in the gulags where he'd deport people to for, they'd go for 5 to 10 years in very hostile conditions. Only 50% would survive. I thought this has to be known. I have to tell the world. And so I felt that I was the keeper of the story. She wouldn't tell anybody else in the details she told me. She was also, I realized, going to pass before too long. I had to preserve the story the very best I could, to the utmost of my ability, and pass it to the world that they too can know. If only it could go into one library was my goal, then I would have achieved what I set out to do.
Thank you. That's fascinating. I didn't know that she actually collaborated with Veronica on this book, that she recorded her stories. That's why her voice, I mean, the voice of the protagonist of Veronica is so vivid, and she's such a believable protagonist. Black Sunflowers points to the fact that in the 1920s and 1930s, Ukraine was a multi-ethnic place that was not only collectivized but also Russified. Your characters are Ukrainians, Poles, and Jews, but all of them are forced to become Soviet. Well, everyone was supposed to be just Soviet. It was Ukrainians who suffered the most during the Holodomor, a genocidal famine, as you've said, orchestrated by Stalin. Can you tell us something about the way your mother-in-law talked about her own identity? After all, she was a Ukrainian of Polish origin who lived through Russification, and then she ended up in Canada.
I think you said was that it was the Ukrainians that suffered the most, not the Polish. Is that?
Yes.
Oh, well, I would disagree. Anyone that lived within the boundaries of Ukraine suffered
Mm-hmm.
suffered the
Yeah,
same.
that's. Mm-hmm.
They suffered the same. It didn't matter. The Soviets didn't care what you called yourself. You live here, and you need to not be here anymore because I'm fed up. This is what Stalin was thinking. I'm just fed up with this whole group of people. They are so resistant to communism. Let's just get rid of them all. Solve the problem. Bring in loyal Russians.
And what was the real Veronica's attitude towards the Soviet Union and Russification? Did she identify as a Soviet or former Soviet individual, or was the Polish heritage really strong in her, or was it
No,
this connection to the Ukrainian land? Was it something that she talked about?
yes, sure, she talked about, and I can speak for the people she knew that were Ukrainians and her Polish family. None of them liked the Soviet government. Very much against it. Really hated how they were told that they have to be Soviet. They were who they were, Polish or Ukrainian. But then they had to keep this the big secret, because
Mm-hmm.
if it comes out, then your whole family could get deported.
They wanted to survive, yeah.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah. Black Sunflowers resonates with readers of different ages. In addition to the meticulously researched historical descriptions, your decision to focus on two characters, Veronica and Yannick, provides readers with a detailed and complex depiction of the Holodomor and collectivization. Why did you decide to include Yannick's voice instead of focusing only on Veronica? Because I think that it's of great importance, and I really appreciate that the two different voices. But
Well,
I would like you to say something more about it.
yeah, well, I wrote the whole book only in Veronica's voice. And then I was told by several very experienced authors and my own editor that, well, if you really want adults to read this book, you're going to have an adult in it too. And so in 6 months, I rewrote the book to include an adult, which is her father. And I like it a lot more this way because Veronica obviously didn't have access to political knowledge. She didn't go to the meetings. But with her father there, he could give the readers an in-depth understanding of what he heard and saw on the collective.
It was a good decision. I'm glad that you decided to introduce
Yes.
Yannick's voice because he is such a likable character too, and the relationship between Yannick and Veronica is so special. And I think that this double focalization is of great importance and makes the book even more universal because it's appealing to both older readers and also younger readers. So there's this intergenerational solidarity also depicted in the book. So that's something that I appreciated.
I just wanted to say that I fell in love with her family. I got so many details about the people. I felt they were my family. I cried when she was telling me different things that happened to them, like with poor Agnieszka, her aunt. I mean, what a life where she loses her husband, her dearly beloved husband. So what I wanted to do was to write this story so powerful that the people that read this book will feel that these people are their people, and they will cry and they will laugh as the chapters change. Because if I don't do that, it'll be like kind of dry history and they will be forgotten, because this is my goal, that these people should be felt deeply, understood, and not forgotten.
Thank you. I don't want to ask you uh, questions about individual characters because I want to encourage as many people as possible to read the book, and I don't want to spoil it for them.
Okay, yes.
But there are many secondary characters that are absolutely incredible, and reading about their experiences is a can be a challenge, at times, as you've said, using the example of Agnieszka. So
Yeah.
who is also a fantastic character. After winning the Peterson Emerging Writer Award, you were able to finish writing the novel you had been working on for many, many years. Can you share some of the feedback you received from the Peterson Award committee upon receiving it regarding their interest in the importance of you completing this historical fiction novel? Because they saw something in the book and they wanted you to finish the book. So, but I'm sure that she received some detailed feedback. So, can you
Yeah.
share this feedback
Yes.
with us?
Well, they felt that my book fulfilled the purpose of I shouldn't call it an award, the grant. It was to promote a better understanding of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. It also had to be relevant to the global Ukrainian community. The handling of the subject matter had to be original. It had to engage the readers and have a balance of knowledge and readability.
Okay, so that's the criteria. Did they ask you to introduce some changes, let's say, or to add some additional characters or move
No,
the no?
no, they
Okay,
didn't
so
do
they
that. Took
oh
it for what it was. Yeah.
that's fantastic. It says a lot about the quality of your writing also. Unlike most other Holodomor themed novels in English, which are set usually in Kharkiv or Kyiv, Black Sunflowers is set in Kuzmin, at that time near Poland. Can you explain how the novel's geographical location influenced how you, as a Canadian, approached writing about the Holodomor? Because it's a completely, I think, different experience writing about a book which is not set in Kharkiv, which is not set in Kyiv. So you had to look for different documents, I think. I mean, I can imagine.
I just actually feel more like a scribe than a creative person. Veronica had such a strong, vivid memory. Yes, I researched what I could, but really there's very little on a village like Kuzmin. Kuzmin's only got about 2,000, 3,000 people at the time. So its importance to the Soviets was of no importance at all. But for the book, it made it different from other Holodomor books, I think, because that region was so close to Poland. People were trying to escape from Ukraine. In the north, south, and east of Ukraine, all around there, that was the wheat growing areas. And that is what Stalin wanted, was the wheat. and took so much wheat. And if they couldn't give up all the wheat he wanted, he did other penalties like take all the food out of their root cellar. But Veronica's region in Western Ukraine was a sugar beet growing, primarily sugar beet, very little wheat. If they had grain, it was mostly buckwheat. Now, this I found out from research too. That was okay to find out. It was available, but the little village of Kuzmin, really, I only had what Veronica told me about what it looked like and what the people did. How my book was affected was that, yes, people in Western Ukraine were losing weight, but mostly they didn't die. Especially if you lived on a farm, you were okay. But in Kuzmin, outside Kuzmin, just outside where the collective was, that's where people were starving because they didn't have the root cellars, as I was reading. They didn't dry fruit. They just, did the crops to sell and expected to get a portion of the crops to buy other food at the market. Well, Stalin took all what they had because of being so annoyed that they didn't fulfill the quota. So starving people from all over Ukraine were making a path to Western Ukraine and then out to try to get to Poland because Poland was free and they would live. So they people by the dozens came by Veronica's mother's door, and she always had something for them. Even though she had nothing, she had soup. Someone could have soup. And Veronica, seeing these people come, I mean, oh, she says they were thin like skeletons, and especially when she'd see children. That really affected her, even when I was talking to her in her 70s. And she was telling me how she'd go to the market on Saturdays with her mom. Her mom would sell sunflower seeds, and there'd be children, street children in the market, just trying to grab, just because they didn't have parents anymore, they would have died. Or the parents were alive, but barely, and they sent the kids to the village to try to get food. And it was just horrific for her to see these things. That's what I wrote about there.
And you did so well, really. As you've already said, you begin many of your chapters with well-chosen and thought-provoking quotations from archival and contemporary references, such as from scholars Oris Subtelny, Timothy Snyder, and Applebaum, and others. Why did you decide to include such references? And can you explain how you selected them? Because you have selected fantastic quotes, really.
I had 20 years to find them.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anytime I was reading, I would if something really hit me, a quotation, I'd just write it down. And then I would file it under, okay, what section was this, a collective? Where would it fit? And then I had all these pages and pages of excellent quotes that I'd have to weed through and find my very favorite. So that's how I did that. Just read those books. Because I just couldn't understand enough of what Veronica was telling me, because she was probably only about 10, 11, 12 years old during the Holodomor. So I just had to get tons of background information.
By answering this question, you also mentioned something that I think is of great importance when it comes to historical fiction: researching. Wow. And not only relying on stories, but also reading documents, reading history. And your book is historically accurate, and it's really meticulously researched.
Well, Matthias, I have a thin skin, and this was my big fear, is that I'd get rotten tomatoes thrown at me through the press. Oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I'd just be so embarrassed. I kind of overkilled the subject for researching. And I That's really good. Wanted these quotes in there. As I said, it verified what I'm saying, but this isn't fanciful information. My wonderful publisher, Fitzhenry and Whiteside, really didn't want quotes. They didn't, because she said, look, your book is fiction. Fiction doesn't have quotes. And I said, well, mine will. No, people will just skip over them. I says, well, you know what? If they do, they do. But there's going to be a lot of people that want to read them. My publisher said, okay, and she put them in. And so that was good. She was so kind and helpful through everything. And the photos too. She really thought that I shouldn't have the photos in because fiction doesn't have photos. That's not that type of book. And I said, please, they're so important. And she believed in me. And she put in almost every photo that I could ever ask for. And I think it makes a big difference. And I know she's very pleased that they're in too, even though they're at great cost to the company to put photos in.
Yeah, the paratexts are, I think, of great importance, and I'm really happy that you managed to convince your publisher that including the photo was the right thing to do, and the author's note, I think, is also long and fantastic. And talking about your publisher, quite often emerging authors decide to self-publish their work. Black Sunflowers was issued by an established publisher. Was it difficult to sign a contract for a Holodomor themed novel that is almost 500 pages long and contains these quotes and photos? Is there any advice you would give to other first-time authors dealing with sensitive subjects like the Holodomor, like genocide?
Well, I must say, I didn't know these were issues. I was a newbie. I didn't know 500 was particularly long for pages, or, and I'd already had my heart set on the photos and quotes before I found out that wasn't to be. To get a contract with Fitzhenry and Whiteside was a bit of a fluky miracle, because I decided that I couldn't wait to go through the normal channels of publishing, because the normal channel is that you submit a few chapters, and then you wait 6 months for them to get back to you, if they ever do. You have to wait for maybe 3 years to get published because they have a backlist of other authors ahead of you. I couldn't do that. I thought, there is a war now happening in Ukraine and Russia, and this is timely. So I got on the phone and I phoned the CEO of Fitzhenry and Whiteside, got her personally, and I said, look, I have a deal for you. This is going to be a fantastic book and you can't turn it down. And at the end of the conversation, she said, oh, send me the whole manuscript.
That's incredible. What a story.
Yeah.
Fantastic advice, because what you've just said points to the fact that emerging authors should believe in their work, really. When you know that something is good, you can convince other people that it's good.
That's right.
Because it was good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think that it's also of great importance that this publisher, Fitzhenry and Whiteside, they also published a fantastic picture book about the Holodomor in 2000, Marcia Forchuk-Skripek and Michael Marchenko's Enough. So now they also have a novel for all ages about the famine. So I think that's now they can cater to different types of readers. So Black Sunflowers has an open ending. Veronica, who survives the Holodomor, now has to face the Nazi invasion. You have stated there will be a sequel. Can you tell us what to expect from book number 2, which you're currently editing? Will it be your final book devoted to Veronica's story, or maybe there will be more books?
I have a feeling it will be the final book, although I could possibly do a third book. I have so much material from Veronica yet. See how my energy goes. Well, and when the Nazis invaded Ukraine, a lot of Ukrainian people were so happy that the Soviets were pushed out of the country through the invasion of the Germans. And of course, these village people didn't have newspapers, radios, no media. The only thing is word of mouth. And they thought that it'd be fine. It'd be quite a bit better than with the Soviets being in control of the country. And right away, the generals that came in said to the people, you could open up your churches again. We're going to let you be an independent nation. Just for now, we're going to govern you, okay? And so, of course, they were rejoicing and giving them bread and flowers and salt. But then very soon, you know what happened? The Jewish people got rounded up in Kuzman and everywhere else. And then after the Jewish people got rounded up, then they took all the children of Ukraine, all the people 30 and under, to Germany to work, because Germany was very short of laborers because they were sent to the war. They needed factory workers and they needed farm workers. So They took these kids by force, very brutally. That's what it's about, her survival in Germany. And my editor told me that she thinks book 2 is better than book 1.
Oh, I
I
can't wait to read it.
I don't know. I love book 1 because of all of Veronica's family. They're my family, as I've been told other readers feel the same. So I don't know. We'll see what the readers think of book 2.
Yeah. I can't wait to read it. I for sure will read it, and I will let you know what I think. And I'm sure that
Okay.
many people will read it. Everyone who has read this book wants to know what's going to happen to Veronica and her family. But you have just said that in book 2, it's mostly Veronica. Does it mean that her family is not a part of the
I
book, or
won't
maybe
answer
they're
that question. That's quite a
okay?
spoiler.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
No spoilers, no
yeah.
spoilers. But yes, but you have convinced us that we all need to read book number 2.
Please,
Uh,
Matthias, may I say something here? I
yeah.
want to do an apology to all my readers. When I wrote this book, I wrote it all as one, and I was going to publish a 1,000-page book. And then they tell me that's not allowed. And that's why I had it ended open like that. I apologize. I don't like openings like that. I like to know exactly what happened and happily ever after the end. And I'm sorry. There was nothing else I could do.
Other than writing the sequel and having it published.
That's
So
it. That's it.
yes.
It was a publisher's fault they wouldn't do a thousand pages for a newbie. They said, "What are you doing, writing Roots or something?"
Yeah,
No.
I'm not surprised, and it's easier to read books that are not as long. This one is already thick. Can you
Yeah.
imagine this book
Can you
being even
imagine?
thicker? Thank you so much, Cynthia. We'll open this up to the audience watching now.
Okay.
Oh, we do have a question. Okay. Cynthia, the fact that you pursued your vision for your book to successful completion is especially important in this new era of disinformation. Your style of historical fiction is an example of scholarship in the public space, which
Oh,
strengthens the reader's knowledge arsenal, regardless of age. I think that this is more of
oh.
a comment, which is, I
Thank
think,
you. That
a
that hits
wonderful
my
comment.
heart. That's what, wow, that's scholarly. Wow, I love
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because it's good that I had these quotations to back me up. Because then people can't say, "Oh, she's just making these things up." And again, like in my thin skin, I don't want any stones. But
Mm-hmm.
I was told it comes with the territory. When you write things that are a bit controversial, you can expect
Mm-hmm.
that. Luckily, so far,
Yes,
nothing bad.
that's good. That's good. Yeah, another question. Did Veronica's mother ever talk about how dispiriting it might have been to have so many passing by in front of her house? How did they keep spirits up? Was it dispiriting? Was it difficult for her? Was it something that she talked about, by the way, Veronica, her mother and her mother's
They would have, but I was pretty literal to what I was told. And
mhm,
I don't recall that. I mean, they were having a hard times themselves. All they had to eat was potatoes that were rotting and dried fruit, and they shared that. And they had to keep their head down and not complain to anybody or let anybody know that they found dissatisfaction with these things. Veronica found that, kids were disappearing from her class,
mhm,
collective children, they were dying. Must have been unbelievably horrible for that, for them to experience that. But no, I don't know anything particularly what she said.
mhm,
Sorry.
mhm. So we have three more questions. Will there be a teacher's guide for educators that will accompany the first novel?
Yes, that's in
Ah,
the works. That's in the
that's
works.
fantastic.
And
That's
we
fantastic.
would also like a teacher's guide for book 2 coming up. I'm pretty sure we'll get one made, but just we're working on book 1 right now. And it would be like for grade 11, 12s, I would assume.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, two more questions and a comment. Did you deal with the relations between the various ethnic groups in Ukraine? Were they helpful to others and get along?
What a super duper question. Yes, Veronica told me many times this from what her father said to her. He said, in our village, we have the Ukrainians, we have Polish, and we have Jewish people. And Veronica, he said, I want you to know Kuzmin is unusual in how well everybody gets along. You won't find that always in other places of Ukraine.
Okay, another one. Cynthia, you do such a wonderful job of portraying the innocence of Veronica and the other children who suffered. I think that Yannick and the adults in the book were at times also rather innocent. Do you think that Soviet propaganda and their willingness to believe it at first have much to do with that?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, I don't think uh, any of Veronica's relatives believe the Soviet propaganda at all. There would be people in every village who would profit from the Soviets because the Soviets needed a Ukrainian or Polish leader in every village. So let's say you don't have very much in the way of land. If you cozied up to the Soviets and followed their directions, they'd give you leadership positions and you would benefit financially. So maybe they would believe in the Soviet systems, but certainly not the people that Veronica told me about. Just pretend to believe in it. Mm-hmm. Pretend to be hard at work, because always there was a fear with the Soviet leaders of sabotage.
Yeah, I also think that sometimes people say things in order to survive, and they pretend that they believe in things. Yeah, so it's not even about innocence; it's about survival. And when you have children, you want them to stay safe, so you tell them things in a certain way because you don't want your own children to think about certain things and get in trouble.
Well, and so that was Yannick's dilemma too, is that he saw his little girl getting Sovietized, and it just bothered him. So he actually told her the truth, much to mother's horror, because you got to protect your child. You can't be speaking against the teacher and against the Soviets. So a little child, something could come out, and then they'd all get sent off to Siberia. My mother-in-law said, in every house on the street, someone got sent to Siberia. Lots of fear, big fear. Veronica was just waiting for her father to get picked up and sent off, and she'd never see him again.
Okay, this is a lovely comment. I'll read it. I just want to say how proud I am of you. Thank you for sharing Veronica's story. I absolutely cannot wait for book 2.
Oh, thank you.
Many people are proud of you. It's such a realistic portrayal of a family struggling to survive and of village life. Was it hard for you to write it, to write about village life?
Very hard. I would often find myself typing and crying. Yes, because it would just hit me. These people, these beautiful people, how could they be treated like that? How could anyone treat another human being like that? And I just weep for what happens to the children. And as Mom said, my mother said, every house had a man taken, and Veronica just was just so terrified. Can you imagine a little child every night thinking, "Will Dad be taken away tonight?" They're listening for horse hooves, because the NKVD, which is the secret police, would like to come at night and they just surround the house and drag the men out and take them away. And for what charge? No charge, just we'll tell you in 20 years what his charge is. And then most likely they'd come back in 2 or 3 months and take away the mother and the kids to a different place. And everybody's scattered and dies. It's terrible. Of course, don't think the whole story is sad like that. That's what's so good about Veronica. She puts the levity into these dark chapters.
Yeah, because it's not a dark book. That's the thing. It is a novel about the Holodomor, about genocide, but it's also a book about a family. It's a book about people, about relationships, about the countryside, and there's a love in this book, and hope.
Yes.
My final question: do you feel like you have honored your ancestors, relatives now, having written the novel?
Very, very much so. I did my duty. I wrote it down. I was given the torch by one elderly woman who represents, in her mind as well as mine, because we talked about it, thousands
Mhm.
and millions of people who lived and died with no one to be to write their story. I mean, Veronica's family wasn't particularly special. Every family in the village and villages would be like them, and they died. So yes, I took the torch, I passed it on, and I hear that this book, Black Sunflowers, is in 48 libraries throughout the United States and Canada. I've done my duty. It's done.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And your book is even here in Wrocław, Poland. So, and I'm pretty sure that many people have bought it, people who live in other countries. You have shared the story with tons of people. Uh, Thank you for the thought-provoking questions. I would like to extend our thanks to Cynthia for her novel, Black Sunflowers, most especially, and for joining us in sharing your creative process with us.
It was my
Thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much
you.
for having me.
It's been such a great pleasure. Thank you to our webinar techs, Claire and Grant, for their amazing job. Thank you so much. Thank you to Sophia Isayu for organizing and coordinating these webinars. We would not have done it without Sophia. Cynthia, congratulations for doing a fabulous job. It's been a great pleasure. And thank you also to all of you who joined us tonight. HREC Education would like me to stress that excerpts from Black Sunflowers can be used in the classroom to describe the process of collectivization, how the Holodomor was organized, and the consequences and effects of it on Ukrainian village and family life, because the historical research for the novel is solid. For additional information about the Holodomor and to view all HREC Education webinar recordings, please visit the HREC Education website, education.holodomor.ca. You will find many resources and teaching materials for classroom use there. If you're looking for a ready-made lesson plan for the classroom with everything needed to teach the Holodomor, you will find information on Valentina Kareliev's popular book, The Historian's Craft Lesson on Human Rights and the Holodomor. Please also consider applying for the annual HREC Educator Award for Holodomor Lesson Plan Development. The application downloads from the website. The deadline to apply is May the 1st, 2025. As the world knows, Russia's war on Ukraine continues into its third year. We witness the Kremlin's continued genocidal intentions from Ukraine, and its people remain the same as they were in the 30s during the Holodomor, having been openly proclaimed by Putin, in which he states his aims are to eradicate Ukrainian identity and Ukraine as a state and a country. The Russian war on Ukraine today demonstrates the relevance of studying the Holodomor to better understand current events. We're grateful to all authors who continue writing novels and picture books and graphic novels about the Holodomor. Thank you for your creativity and skills and for bringing awareness of it to today's youth. Thank you and good night. Slava Ukraini. With this, we end our webinar today. Thank you again for your participation and interest in the Holodomor.